Senator Blumenthal.
Hi. I think you may be, or I may be one of the last. Um, Let me just say, because you've been following it so closely, um, the fight this morning shows that we are determined to oppose this nomination. My Republican colleagues may have the votes. They don't have the right side of the argument or history. And I think this skirmish this morning shows that we are determined to fight. We're going to fight to the very end. And we're going to continue to say to the American people, you should be the ones to pick through the election that will take place on November 3rd. The next president, the next Senate should pick the next justice. We want you to tell your Republican colleagues, because all we need is two.
On COVID-19 relief, President Trump today advocating for a plan of at least $1.8 trillion. Do you think that's something that you all could get behind? Could your Republican colleagues get behind it?
You know, a COVID-19 package has to be robust, strong, and effective. And so far, we've seen nothing on the Republican side that comes anywhere near what is necessary. What we've seen today and for the last weeks is a focus on ramming through this justice nominee who would decimate the healthcare system in the midst of a healthcare crisis. And that typifies the attitude of the Republicans. They've really, if anything, gone backward over these weeks.
If, let's say, Speaker Pelosi and the administration can come to an agreement around that $1.8 trillion and it gets kicked over to you, is it time to do like something? Is something better than nothing at this point as we're getting this close to Election Day?
I think we need to do something, but it has to be adequate. And the kind of package has to reflect not only adequate numbers, but the kinds of aid that is required. It's more than just the total. It is what goes into the package in terms of meeting needs. Unemployment insurance, extended aid for small businesses, stimulus payments, but also aid in terms of vaccines, testing, PPE, and state and local governments.
Senator, 2 years ago at the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, after the initial hearing, a whole lot else happened. There were allegations, there were protests, we saw a lot happen in that week between the hearing and the vote. Do you anticipate anything, whether it's protests or anything like kind of changing the game this time around, or?
Our main and last best hope is for the American people to tell my colleagues, vote against this nominee and delay it until after the election. If they're hearing it from enough people, those protests have to occur outside Washington, not in the halls here or even in the streets. They have to go to my Republican colleagues who have to hear, this court is ours. The nominee should be chosen with our voice. We want to say in this election through the president and the Senate who will be elected.
Senator, yesterday, Twitter and Facebook were censoring posts made by people posting about the New York Post story about Hunter Biden. And this morning, Representative McCarthy had called for the changing of Section 230. Do you agree with that the Section 230 needs to be reworked?
I've been a long-time advocate. In fact, I've been the leader of the latest reform of Section 230, Shasta, which prohibits sex trafficking and provides for expanded liability, cutting back on Section 230 in a very targeted, narrow way. The reform of Section 230 should be done with a scalpel, not a meat axe. The blunderbuss, overbroad, in effect, demagogic proposal to just eliminate it or cut it without sufficient thought or care, I think is a political move. It's designed simply for political purposes going into this election and to intimidate the tech companies. In effect, it's designed to play the referee. So I think there has to be revision of Section 230. In fact, Senator Graham and I have a bill, it's called the Earn It Bill, that would propose expanded liability in cases of misuse of sexual images, particularly pornographic images, minors and so forth, which result from sexual abuse. That kind of targeted approach, I think, is the one to take.
Your Republican colleagues have said they'd like to subpoena Jack Dorsey next week. Is that something that you think any Democrats would get behind? What's your response to their efforts to do that?
Well, we supported in the Commerce Committee subpoenas for some of the heads of big tech companies.
But in this storyline specifically, in terms of as it relates to this New York Post story, should Jack Dorsey be subpoenaed to come in and talk about why Twitter is making that a hard story to share?
Well, I think, again, subpoenas should not be used as political weapons. And the effort to, in effect, weaponize the Senate's subpoena power, I think is a bad idea.
Thank you,
you.
Senator.